I started with Fender in 1980. I was a supervisor in the quality control department. And I came in and was assigned to the Fender amp line and the Rhodes piano line. Now, I had used the instruments, as a musician, but really never had been involved in the production of them, things like that. So it was a massive learning curve. But especially with the piano, I played enough that I could sit down at one and go, yeah, this works, or no, this doesn't. And it used to drive the guy that was the production supervisor crazy, because he was a real nuts and bolts kind of guy. I mean, he was more like a car mechanic. And he didn't want to hear that, oh, it didn't sound right. I mean, that to him was like, well, he would just sort of go into outer space when you talk like that to him. But that's what it was all about, was being able to hear it. And there were enough subtleties in the way a Rhodes was put together that if it wasn't right, you could hear certain things. And when it was right, it was magic. And that was what I had to try to convince this guy how to do, was to put them together so the majority of them were as good as they could be. So I was kind of in an interesting position, that being in quality control, I had the production world on one side, and then I had the sales, marketing, R&D people on the other side. So those people, sales, marketing, R&D, they envisioned perfection. Everything was going to be perfect. How could it be anything but perfect? And on the other hand, there was the day-to-day hassles of manufacturing, of how do you take something like a Rhodes piano that has so many parts, so many pieces, a huge amount of labor, a lot of different people involved, and make sure that every part and every person is 100% right. So it was an interesting challenge in the beginning. I think I'd been with the company maybe a year and a half, and he asked me one day, hey, would you like to go to Boston and do a clinic with Harold Rhodes? Well, first of all, I didn't know if I could say no. So, of course, I said yes. So the next thing I know, Harold and I are flying to Boston to do a clinic at this very prestigious music store in Boston, E.U. Wurlitzer's. And they were a huge Rhodes dealer. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I'm with Harold. I didn't know if I was supposed to carry a suitcase or, okay, folks, hi, I'm Steve, and I play a little bit. And then everybody was there to see Harold. And so it's like, well, that went okay. And ended up doing a couple of other things like that while I was still part of the quality control. And just again, one thing kind of led to another, and by 1983, the guy who had was brought in to do marketing when CBS bought ARP and got more into the synthesizer side of things, he went to work for Kurzweil when they first started. So they gave me the job as marketing director for all the keyboards. So I got in on the marketing side right at the tail end, but also I was involved a lot in the marketing of the Mark V. One day scared me to death. I'm the young supervisor there on the piano line, and I walk out, and here's the president of CBS Musical Instruments in the little setup booth playing one of the pianos. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's the guy, the biggest boss of all. And I had not really met him per se, but I knew who he was. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? He had just stopped by. As it turns out, to walk to his office, he had to walk right by the production line. And he heard one of the setup guys playing, and he went over and he wanted to have a play on it. So once I calmed down, we ended up having a great conversation. And so then it became commonplace. I mean, maybe once every, a couple times a month, maybe he'd come by and, say, can I play one? Yes, sir. You can play as many as you'd like. But again, he had that kind of really enjoyment for the instrument. He just wanted to sit down and play it. He was more than happy to talk to a couple of the workers. There were 2 or 3 guys that worked on the Rhodes line that were pretty good players themselves. So one of the guys was about John's age, and so they'd like exchange tunes. So it was kind of cool to see, one of the workers is talking to like the top executive in the whole company, and the common denominator was the piano. So that was nice.